Hi, everybody. It's Renelle Delmont again, and I'm here to make a plea. I don't want you to buy anything. You don't have to spend any money. Just go to my website and click on the link that says petition. Um, I'll show it to you in a minute. Let's see if it's going to work because I've done this video 3 times already and I'm not sure. Okay, there. That's my website. There's all kinds of stuff in the way. I don't know if you see what I see, but okay, that's my website. It's www.lindberghkidnappinghoax.com. And if you do a slash petition.html, you'll get the same thing as you're going to get by clicking this link that I just added the other day. Sign important petition for DNA tests of Lindbergh ransom envelopes. That's a lot of words, but if you click it, you're going to get an explanation for what's been going on with the Jersey State Police refusing to authorize modern DNA testing on 13 ransom envelopes and 10 stamps. You know, probably from reading even a little bit about this case, that there were many ransom negotiations that came through the mail. And since Richard Hauptmann was put into the electric chair and people like myself believe he was framed, we want to know the truth, even if it's almost 100 years later. It's important to know who licked those envelopes, and we don't know. We're probably never going to find out unless we all get together and put pressure on the state of New Jersey and the police. I think the police are willing. There's some other mechanism going on in the government there that keeps refusing year after year. I tried 27 years ago when I made this website. I wrote and did whatever I could to ask people to allow DNA testing. But now the DNA testing is so fine, refined, that you don't destroy any envelopes, and the state keeps saying that these are historical documents and they can't be tampered with, which makes no sense because they handed over in 2004, they handed over, well, I'll get to that in a minute again. So you read all this stuff on my website, and then you go to the bottom. To support this effort, please copy and paste. You know how to do that. You just copy all this stuff and you copy it, and then you go to your email, put it in your email, and mail it to kurt.perhatch at ej at e at I haven't gone to sleep yet, and I'm making all these videos that don't come out properly. So this is the fourth attempt at doing it. Okay, kurt.perhatch@gmail.com. And you just send it off with your name, the date, and perhaps the state or the town that you live in, and that's it. They're not asking for money. They're not asking for credit cards or social security numbers. That's all you got to do. And if we get enough people to request, to pressure them into allowing the testing, well, maybe we'll get somewhere. No, I'm going to stop the sharing. And I hope I'm back. Yeah, and I'm in front of the two boards. Here they are. The ransom, and I started to say, it makes no sense for them to refuse on the grounds that these are I keep saying hysterical. These are historical documents, and they don't want them tampered with. They don't want them destroyed. Well, forensic testing is so refined these days, they're not going to be destroyed. It's only the flaps where somebody might have licked the envelopes. I mean, I was in the antiques business, so I know long ago, 100 years ago, people didn't usually lick stamps or envelopes. They had a sponge on their desk, and there was water in the little jar, in a little cup, and they had a sponge, a real sponge, and they wet the flap directly on the sponge or the postage stamp. So it's possible that that long ago nobody actually licked it, but we need to know. And by signing those petitions and getting enough to submit, we may be able, wow, that would be something. I don't even want to think about it. It's just too good to be true that they would allow it, because they've been stonewalling for decades and decades. In fact, the museum is now closed and nobody knows what's going on there. But the envelopes hopefully are still in the safe. When I went 27 years ago, Mark Falzini took them out of the safe. I held them in my hands. I looked at everything inside, outside, upside down. It was great fun, but they need to be tested for DNA evidence. And yes, so I started to say how ridiculous the state of New Jersey becomes when they stonewall this effort, even when it's not going to cost the residents of the state of New Jersey a nickel, because the fellows who were doing this, I didn't tell you their names yet, but I will. I want to get back to what I was trying to explain. They're standing on a principle that is a law, and it's a good law. You don't want people running into museums saying that belongs to me, give it to me, even though it's the Koh-i-Noor, that the British took from India. And every museum in the world, not every museum in the world, but most Western countries, European countries, and especially our country, we genocided all the Indians here and took everything from them and made museums in Washington and all over with their stuff in it. They should have it back. It's shameful. You murder all the people and then you make a museum dedicated to their art. Where am I going with this? Yes, so I'm understanding. I used to be an antiques dealer long ago in Greenwich Village. And so I understand the need for regulations regarding people claiming that they own stuff and they want it back and you should turn it over to them. In the cases I just mentioned, there's no question. All these people, the Indians in India, the American Indians here, they were just slaughtered and everything taken from them and used for economic gain and all that. Okay, so these are the regulations in New Jersey that are supposedly preventing the DNA testing. The state keeps saying, the courts of Jersey keep saying that we can't we can't destroy historical documents. And certainly the Lindbergh kidnapping is a historical event. There's a museum in, well, I guess it's still open. The archive is closed, but I guess the museum may still be open there in West Trenton, New Jersey, at the state police department. But they keep, and I've been through this for 27 years. I don't even want to go through it. It's very aggravating. Anybody who's tried to do any pressure on the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey, they get all kinds of answers, but it's always boiled down to their historical documents and they cannot be tampered with. Well, in 2004, the Lindbergh family came with a court order to that archive and to that museum in West Trenton, New Jersey, and demanded all the evidence that pertained to the child who died to be handed over to the Lindbergh family, and that's exactly what they did. Nobody questioned it then. The Lindberghs looted the museum with things like the sleeping suit, which is a major relic of the case. It's a major feature of the whole event. A lot of things moved around that sleeping suit, which was evidence at the trial. They took hair and bone and teeth and all kinds of all kinds of objects that might have led to DNA testing, and nobody understood at the time what they were doing it for. But obviously, we now know there were seven European adults claiming to be the offspring of Charles Lindbergh. And it seems to me that in 2004, when that was secretly going on, nobody knew about it yet. The museum held the key to proving that those seven adults in Europe, actually Germany, those seven German adults were the children of Charles Lindbergh. And it was right there in the museum. They could have used the bones, the hair, the sleeping suit, and the state of New Jersey just turned it all over to them, to their lawyer. And the archivist had to pack it all up within 24 hours. And nobody argued at that time. The state didn't have an argument. Oh, these are historical documents, and we can't turn them over. Yeah, they did. They turned it all over. And then when Mike Holefield, who was a reporter here in Florida, he got so involved in the case, he had his station, WKMG in Orlando, Catherine Graham Meyer, I forget her initials, the lady who used to own the Washington Post. So it was a television station in Orlando, and a reporter named Mike Holefield came to visit me, and that's another story. But he got so wrapped up in this case that he went up to New Jersey to the archive, and he met Mark Falzini and asked, and then Mike went back and he asked the station to foot the bill for forensic testing of these envelopes. I'm talking at least 15 years ago, this had to have happened. And the Attorney General said, okay, you can do it as long as your station pays for the testing. We don't care. And Mike bought a ticket. He was coming up to New Jersey from Florida to get the envelopes out of the safe, to bring them to the laboratory to be tested. And I believe he was bringing them to the same lab that did the O.J. Simpson testing, whatever. And he calls me up that morning. I'll never forget this conversation. And he says, Ronell, they changed their mind. We were all thinking, my goodness, we're going to solve this case now. He's gone up, a reporter from a television station. He's going to go get them tested. We're going to find out who licked those envelopes, which relates to the extortion of the, 50,000 was supposedly lost. I don't believe anything anymore. I'm really questioning everything in this case the longer it goes on. So Lindbergh lost $50,000 in a cemetery, somebody handed over cash. And now we're going to find out who licked those envelopes, who led them to the cemetery, who was involved in the extortion. And Mike Holefield said to me that morning, Ronell, they changed their mind. What? What do you mean they changed their mind? Well, he says the Attorney General originally verbally on the phone said, okay, you can test those envelopes. And then the station that he worked for said, no, you've got to get this in writing. We're footing the bill for this testing. You get this in writing, get the permission in writing. So Mike went on the phone, asked permission in writing, and they said no. And he already bought his ticket to New Jersey. And he says to me, I can't go. They changed their mind. I said, what? They just handed over because I said to him, well, what excuse did they give for changing? What he was dealing with the Attorney General at that time, who got fired 2 weeks later, and they brought in another Attorney General soon afterward. And I said to him on the phone, I said, well, what excuse did they have for changing their mind? And he said, well, they say it's historical documents that cannot be tampered with, and we're not letting you fool around with them. They're historical artifacts. And that's when I exploded because I said to him, they just handed over all that stuff to the Lindberghs. And what is more, what is a bigger artifact than that sleeping suit? If you read anything about the case, you know the sleeping suit is a vital element of the whole story. And they handed all of it over to the Lindberghs, and it didn't help them because those kids in Germany, without the DNA from all the bone, they gave them back bones and hair and teeth, little elements of the poor child's corpse that remained in the soil. And it was all on display behind a glass showcase. This is not something packed away, never seen. It was all displayed in a museum. Even the little bottles of bone and hair. I have pictures of it on my website. So if you go there, you can see those photographs because I took them when they were still there. But they handed it all over to the Lindbergh family, who were worried. We didn't understand at the time. They were very worried that the children, the adults in Europe, were going to make a claim against their estate because they're the legitimate children of Charles Lindbergh, who nobody knew about. But as it turned out, nobody used the forensic element. Nobody tested these artifacts from the museum because Lindbergh's grandchild or great grandchild, Eric Lindbergh, flew over to Germany and gave a sample of his blood, which proved that they were direct descendants, the offspring of Charles Lindbergh, seven of them. They're probably 70 or 700. I mean, he roamed the world and God knows where the others are. But probably the Philippines or Africa, Kenya, where he spent time. Okay, that's topic for another another video. But right now, I just hope that everybody listening will go and sign that petition. Just go to, I'll put the link. If this video works, I've already deleted 3 videos that came out weird. I don't know what Zoom has done to their software, but it's not working for me today. Anyway, yeah, okay. So the reason I chose this photograph to sit in front of for this video, you understand how important the ransom notes are. And yes, the fellows who are doing this are 3 names. I've never met any of them. There's Chuck Braverman, who's a producer of documentaries or films, and then there's Wayne McDaniel, who I talk to every now and then, and he's a wonderful guy. I think he's making documentaries also with Chuck Braverman, and the lawyer who's handling this process, who's also very much interested in the outcome. His name is Kurt Perhatch, and you saw his name in the on my website. Okay, now here's the photograph that's very important to me. Um, I don't know if my mouse works in this video, but you can see a space between these. We're looking at Hauptmann's attic. Actually, this is not Hauptmann's attic. This is Pauline Rausch's attic. She's the owner of this house. Hauptmann didn't own it. He rented it. I think he paid $45 a month to live in the upstairs apartment, above which was an attic. And you're looking at the floor of this attic where the police who lived there after they arrested Hauptmann, they made life miserable for Anna, and she moved over to New Jersey to be near her husband. And the police rented this apartment. A guy named Bornman. It's a big story that I won't go into, but he had possession. He paid the rent, and he had possession of this house for several months. The defense never got inside before the trial. I don't even think they got in after the trial. But what you're looking at is a photograph depicting what is on I don't know how you're seeing this, if this is your left or your right, but this is rail 16, which was supposedly part of the kidnap ladder. And this, behind my head, in case you're not seeing my cursor, behind my head is the plank from the floorboard. It's a floorboard of the attic above Hauptmann's apartment that David Wilentz claimed Hauptmann needing, this is ridiculous. He didn't know he needed 6 pieces of wood for the rails. How can you bake a cake without knowing how much flour you need? How can you make a dress without knowing the yardage you need? How does a carpenter make a ladder of 3-piece ladder without knowing he needs 6 pieces of wood for the side rails? Well, okay. So this is the rail piece. I think it's called S226 in the trial. And okay, you'll get the point. Even if you don't see my cursor moving, I want you to tell me how in the world the rail got thicker than the board in the attic, because it's thicker by maybe 1/8 of an inch. You can't see it, but they measured it. How does that look normal to you, that these 2 pieces were in the same tree together, the same? Well, they could have been in the same tree, but certainly not connected. This is fraud. And I've invited Kevin Correga several times to do a video and explain to you why he believes, and everybody else except me believe, that these 2 pieces were once joined. Nobody's ever found the 1.25 or 1 3/4 that supposedly joined them. It doesn't exist. So what they did at the trial, somebody, and nobody knows who did it. I've asked Mark Falzini, and he doesn't know. They cut up a piece of paper or a piece of cardboard, and they drew lines to help the jury with their imagination. Drew lines from one what do you call these things again? I forget the word for it. Drew lines connecting it to this knot, or maybe it was this knot. I don't know. Yeah, this knot. There's a knot here, something. Whatever. They drew lines, and they told the jury they were connected. So that's a very important part of this case that needs to be forensically tested, because every living thing on Earth has DNA, can be tested for DNA, whether it's a petunia or the petunia, the whale in the ocean, or you and me, or wood. Wood was once a living object in a tree, and it can be tested for DNA, and we would know better than the ransom notes. This is more important, because this is what brought Richard Hauptmann to New Jersey to go on trial for kidnapping in Flemington. Otherwise, he would, without this faked up evidence, he would have remained in the Bronx and been put on trial for extortion, because they were saying that he wrote the ransom notes. They were saying that his handwriting matched, which, if you look at his handwriting, doesn't match anything. And they had 8 handwriting experts. These are people who make a living from going to trial after trial, and whoever pays them the most, they generally find reasons to side with that part of the debate or the crime. They side with one side or the other. They're never going to go to court and make a living if they keep saying the wrong thing. And obviously, Osborne and his son, the 2 authorities, the great authorities, who've gotten so much wrong in their history, they wrote, the father, Albert Osborne, who was deaf at the time of the trial, wrote, I have a copy of it here, he wrote the definitive book on document questions. what's it called? Question documents, whatever the title is. And they had 8 of those handwriting specialists. The reason I brought up Osborne is because he said immediately this doesn't match until they found the money in Hauptmann's garage. And then he changed his mind because the cops were never going to use him very much if he kept saying the truth. And that's the problem with a lot of cases. Telling the truth can be harmful to your living, to your whatever. Okay, well, tomorrow is tax day. And it's April 14th, so get going with the petition, and because I think there's a limit to how long he can wait with turning it in. And let's get some forensic testing going. They're probably going to say no, but maybe not. I'm waiting for the latter. That's what I'm waiting for. Okay, everybody, good night or good morning, whatever it is. Bye.